3 more verses and we'll be done with Jonah 2. This is a very short verse, Jonah 2:8, but some new stuff in it. So see if you can pronounce it. Here's my pronunciation. Ma-shamarim, and by the way, because the mem is doubled, it's not a Bagad Kavat letter, that's a true dagesh that's doubling. It's a doubled mem, that has to be a vocal schwa. And since this first schwa is under the first letter, which coincidentally is also a mem, it's a vocal schwa as well. Ma-sham-ma-rim. Pronounce the M twice if you're really good. So we'll come back to that in a second. Hav-le, shav. This is interesting. The aleph quiesces. It's like it goes bye-bye, as far as pronunciation. It's like shav. That's all there is. So this is a silent schwa as well, even though I believe that's an A vowel, a long A, but it's because the aleph quiesces. Kas dam ya-azovu. All right. So what is this? Do you recognize anything? You should recognize the Hirik Yod mem. That's a masculine plural absolute ending, something plural. You should recognize Sarah Yod. That is masculine plural construct. Now the hey here, that's not the article. That's hevel, is an idol. So idols of is the way this would be translation. And then I think shav is like idols of emptiness. So the paying heed ones, we'll come back to that in a second, paying heed to idols of emptiness or empty idols, kind of a roundabout way of saying empty idols. What else do you recognize? Well, this mem is a possessive suffix. We've not seen a lot of them. We did have the video. We learned the possessive suffixes, the pronominal suffixes. Mem is where there comes from. There, kesed. I didn't translate it in part so I could get everything in one line. But kesed is a very important Old Testament word. It means God's, it doesn't always mean God's. It refers to one's faithfulness, one's trustworthiness. And so those who pay attention to empty idols forsake their faithfulness to God. So it's human faithfulness to God that's in mind here. Their covenant keeping, covenant faithfulness, N.T. Wright would say that's probably a little bit of an overread in most cases. But their hesed, and then what's this one? Well, hiding in the middle here is the word azav, which means to abandon or forsake. The yod on the front, you might guess, is the imperfect. It's the performative of the third masculine something. And with the sharuk at the end, it's third masculine plural. That's where the they comes from. So the ones who pay attention to empty idols or idols of emptiness, they forsake their faithfulness to Yahweh. Okay, so there's the sense of it, and hopefully you got it. You know the masculine plural absolute ending, the masculine plural construct ending. You get the possessive third masculine plural possessive, and you get the third masculine plural imperfect of azav there. So this is the one, though. This little grammar bit is new. So let's talk about it. Shall we? So you see that this is shavar, which means something like, shamar, which means something like to keep. And it has a doubled second. So if there are 3 radicals, shin, mem, resh, the second one is doubled. There's a stem that does that. I just saw a video somewhere that told me about that stem. It's the doubling stem, the D stem, or in the old language, it's the PL stem, which it's a hard stem to kind of understand. It can mean to put something in a certain state. So if shavar means to break, then shiver means shiber means to shatter, to put into a broken state. But anyway, I basically looked up the meaning of this because the word shamar, it really means to keep. And so it's kind of a stretch to say, well, you're putting it into a kept state. That is, I'm paying attention to it. Makes a little sense, but not really. So if you go to Blue Letter Bible, as I showed you in a previous video, and you go down to the Brown Driver Briggs lexicon, BDB for short, it'll tell you that in the D stem, it means to pay heed. So there you have it, or the PL stem. Now, how do we recognize this? Well, I could have recognized it or had a hunch that it was the doubling stem because the second letter is doubled. However, you might remember from our video on the imperfect of the D stem that it has a shavah under the performative. Now, if this were a finite verb, a regular verb, then we would have a yod here or a tav here or an aleph or a nun or one of the imperfect performatives. But mem, and here we have it, a new thing, mem is a sign of a participle in one of these other stems. Now, you don't get a mem in the basic participle. We've seen the basic participle of the G stem or the call stem. We've seen that. It doesn't have a mem on the front. But the D stem, the H stem, they both have a mem on the front if it's a participle. And the shavah under the mem is another clue. I'm building a case here. It's another clue that we're looking at a D participle or a PL participle. So if in the D stem it means something like to pay heed, then the ing form of it, the participle would be something like the paying heed ones. But that's not good English, right? So a lot of times in that kind of situation where you're saying the paying heed to idols people, you just say something like those who pay heed. We have to kind of play with it like it's a game. The ones who pay heed to idols of emptiness, they forsake their faithfulness. So the im at the end is where the masculine plural absolute comes from. The doubled shamar tells me it's a D stem and it's from shamar. And then the mem tells me it's a participle, and the shavah tells me it's a D participle. And it all comes together. I love it when a plan comes together.